Now let's take a look at Character Studio, and more specifically, Biped. Now, Biped is a built-in skeletal system that allows you to work with motion capture, and it also allows for automated animation using footsteps. So let's take a look at how to work with and create a basic biped. Now I have this character in the scene, and right now I'm just going to go ahead and freeze my selection. And let's go into wireframe so we can just see what we're doing here. Now I'm going to create a biped that is the same size as this character. Now we can create bipeds in the Create panel under Systems, and we have a biped button. Now when I select this, it actually gives me a number of options here, and I can actually change those options before I create my biped. So for example, this character has a number of fingers, so we can say put 5 fingers, 4 fingers and a thumb, and then 3 links for that. I'm going to not animate the toes, so I can just have 1 toe that I can use just for the bottom of the foot, and so on. So once we have all of these set, we can actually create our biped. Now I'm actually going to do that in a front view here. So once we have all of our stuff set up, all we have to do is left click and drag, and you can see how we can create this biped, which is pretty much a human figure here. So I'm going to create it so it's pretty much the same size as my existing character. And then I'm going to go into select or move mode. Now if I go back out to my perspective view, I'm actually going to go ahead and unfreeze everything. And then I'm going to actually hide my character for just a bit. So let's just take a look at this biped. So as you can see, the biped, as we created it, it has 5 fingers, has 1 toe, which we can manipulate, as well as just standard parts for a character. So we can actually fit this character to the mesh, and then once it's fit to the mesh, we can use a skin modifier to deform that mesh. Now the biped itself is actually composed of separate bones. So if I were to say select the upper arm, you can see how I have an upper arm and a forearm. And so I actually have separate objects that are bones in this structure. So if I go into, say, a modify panel, this won't really show me anything specific about it. So in order to actually modify this biped, I actually have to go into the motion panel. So when I'm in the motion panel, you'll see that we have all of these biped controls. Now this is actually pretty sophisticated, but I'm just going to go over some of the basics. And right now we're going to take a look at how to pose this character so that it fits the mesh. Now we can do this using what's called figure mode. When I select this, notice how my menus change. And right here I can actually change my creation parameters. So if I wanted to, I could add or subtract spine links, for example, or neck links or whatever. I can actually change the structure of my character. And I can also manipulate the structure of it. So the goal here is to actually pose this character so it matches up with the mesh. So I'm actually going to go ahead and unhide that mesh, select it, right click, and let's just do a freeze selection, and I'm going to go into wireframe. So now I've got a mesh that I'm not going to accidentally select, and let's go through some of the process of fitting this biped to the mesh. Now we can do this interactively by just manipulating the joints. So probably the easiest way to do it is to select one side of the character, fit everything to that, and then mirror that over on the other side. And it's very similar to how we did it for skinning. So sometimes you may need to go into, say, a front view or something like that, and you can start to select these bones and manipulate them. So if I wanted to, I could select this clavicle and move it so that the shoulder is kind of in this round part of the shoulder. I can select the shoulder itself and rotate it so that it matches up. And if my clavicle is a little too high, I can move it down so that the arm is centered. I can go into something like a top viewport here and rotate these arms. Now another thing we can do is we can actually scale joint. So I'm actually going to go into a perspective view here, and you can see that I've got these toe joints here. If I want to, I can double click on those to select all of them, and I can use my scale tool to scale them up, scale them longer, or scale them wider. So I kind of want them about the same size as the foot there, so that when I do my skin deformation, it'll work. Now once we have all of this in place, and we've actually fit the bones to the mesh, we can actually select these joints, or double click to select multiple joints, and we can copy them from one place to the other. So I have a copy paste rollout here. I open that up, and the first thing I need to do is hit this create collection button. And what that does is allows me to actually copy and paste joints from one side to the other. So if I select all of these joints here, select copy posture, I can paste that posture opposite. Now that was just for those bones that were selected. So if I select the foot, I can again copy and paste that opposite, and notice how that opposite foot, the right foot, has scaled to match that. So as you can see, it's fairly straightforward to create a biped and align it with a mesh.